So tell us, I would love to hear stories about the early
Yes.
days
Yep.
of, the Comedy Store.
Oh, when I got there in 1995,
Uh-huh.
it was in the downward spiral. Like
Mm.
the internet had just been invented and reality television was just
Oh,
coming
yeah,
out.
Oh,
that was
So everybody was home on the internet, and YouTube had like 10-minute videos at the time,
mhm,
and the internet was out, and you could, watch movies online now. So people were starting to like stay home.
mhm.
So it was like the dark days of the Comedy Store. So from 95, I was there from 95 to 2005. And it was like Mitzi was like robbing Peter to pay Paul because we
mm.
couldn't get
Mm.
people. So us comics took it upon ourselves to bring tickets because we had stacks and stacks that Mitzi had made of Comedy Store tickets. They were really nice, laminated. It was like a 2 for 1 on it or whatever, like 2 tickets, whatever. We'd go to all the hotels, like the Hyatt, the Mondrian, the Standard, all these hotels, and
Mhm.
give them to the concierge and say, would you give these to your,
Yes.
hotel guests so we can get people in the doors because we weren't really worried about the cover charge so much as we were just getting the drinks and getting the people in there,
Right.
because
Mm.
they had to do a 2 drink minimum. So we figured if people come in, they'll get the drinks, Mitzi, then we can, do our shows. So the
Right.
main room didn't have comps. You had to pay to get in there because that's
Mhm.
where she put all the headliners on the weekends. But even that was only open like one night a week at that point. Like it
Mm.
wasn't
Oh,
open 2 nights anymore. And it got really dark. So like that place, we ran amok and the comics just kind of ran it. It was like a show. And like so at the time, Carlos Mencia was the big thing.
Oh, when do you
Mm.
were you around when all that when he got called out?
Yeah. Rogan been doing that for a long time.
Okay,
And when I left, that happened right after I left to New York.
okay.
But I remember like Mencia was like the king, and then Rogan had Fear Factor. He had News Radio, then he got Fear Factor, and then he was coming up. So him and Carlos would bump heads because
Uh-huh.
Joe Rogan would clock him on his joke stealing. And then Dice
Mm.
would come in and bump everybody. Damon Wayans would come in, but Eddie Griffin was notorious for just bumping everybody for 3 or 4 hours and just doing. And then you're like, oh, yeah, forget it. We just go home
Right.
because we knew we weren't getting on. And then there's times at night where the show would start at 8 o'clock
Uh-huh.
and people wouldn't show up. We wouldn't have an audience till about 9:15, 9:30, maybe
Wow.
quarter to 10 because it was so nobody went out anymore. Like it was
Right.
that dark time when nobody went out. They all
Right when
stayed
the
home and
internet
watched.
began.
Yep, they were watching reality TV and they were watching the internet, this new
Mm.
thing with the internet. So it just was like we were doing anything. So like it was just so hard. And then like holidays would be good there. And then it
Mhm.
got slowly got better in the 2000s. It started picking up again and Mitzi got sicker and sicker. So she wasn't in as much. And I remember when I first got there, Richard Pryor was there 3
Wow.
nights a week to
Mm.
help Mitzi out. He was there Monday, Wednesdays, and Fridays in the original room at 8 o'clock. And he was already, really sick.
Mm.
And then Paul Mooney would take me to his house and we'd
Wow.
visit him. We'd spend the, evening making him laugh and watching TV with him. And,
So
I'm
you
sitting
got
there.
to enjoy
Oh, yeah. I got to really hang out
wow.
with Richard Pryor. He
That's
was
great.
That's
and
iconic.
yeah, the stories, like, it was so fun, like, back in those he lived out in Encino,
Uh-huh.
and Mooney and I would go out there, and Mooney was like my father, like, he really treated me like one of his kids, and we would go to Richard's house, and he'd be sick, so he'd be in bed. Remember those giant console TVs?
Mhm.
Oh,
They're
yeah.
those humongous consoles that our parents had, and he had one in his bedroom, and there was a rocking chair, and he had his king size bed. It was like propped up for him, like one of those electronic beds or whatever you call them. And he would watch TV, and he always watched Manic. So we came over, and we were drinking, tea and hanging out with him, and Jennifer's running around the house being a crazy person,
Mm.
and and I would just start joking about the TV. We'd have it down low, and I go, "You look at this." I go, "They got that poor child is black secretary, and her only line is coffee Joe." Like, seriously? I'm like, that bitch is like, bitch, I ain't even trying to get this white man his coffee. She's on the phone. And I was just riffing on the show. And Richard's like, and Mooney's laughing. And then Jennifer
Wow.
comes running. What are you guys laughing at? I'm like, oh, nothing. We're just being but it was like, but I would sit there and go, I'm sitting here with Richard Pryor and Paul Mooney.
That is
That's
Like,
iconic.
wonderful.
pinch me right now. Like, I was like,
Wow.
where am I? Like, what universe was I in that I ever thought this would ever happen?
Wow.
But it was amazing. And then when he died, that was really brutal.
Mm.
But but yeah, those were fun times. Like he was such a nice man, and he loved funny people. when you were funny, he loved it.
Wow.
He would like, I remember, because Jennifer Lee, his wife, is
Uh-huh.
crazy.
Right.
Um, but we didn't go over for a while because she was crazy, and we all got busy. And she popped in at the Comedy Store one time on New Year's Eve,
Mhm.
and she was drunk, and she's like, looks at me after the show, and she goes, "You never come over anymore to visit Richard." And I was like, I didn't know I was allowed to without Paul.
Yeah, you don't wanna,
I'm
like,
not
just
going to just
show
show
up.
up,
Right,
just
right,
some
right.
asshole just showing
Yeah.
up at your doorstep.
Right.
She goes, "You need to come visit him more." And I said, "I would love that. I just didn't know I was invited,
Right.
Jennifer. Just
Yeah.
let me know when a good time, and I will be there.
Yeah.
I will cancel everything for him."
Sure.
And I was like, "Oh, this
That
bitch is
is
crazy."
you really got to see the legend of all legend